Scary Good. Welcome to Daily Dogman on the Scary Good NYC channel. I'm your old pal Bigfoot. So, happy Tuesday, everyone. Today we're doing 2 for Tuesday. That's 2 Dogman stories for the price of 1, which is free. So, anyway, don't go away after the first story because we'll be right back with number 2. Both of these are adapted from emails sent in by viewers who wish to remain anonymous. I do not know if they are real. I am presenting them for entertainment purposes only. Let's get started with the first story, which is called Abandoned Tunnel Dogman. Dear Daily Dogman, here's a story you might want to use. This happened about the year 1998 or 1999, and although I'm going to tell you it's true, I know you're going to add something about how you don't know who I am, and so therefore you're only presenting the story for entertainment purposes only. That's fine, because I'm a little scared of telling the story in a serious manner anyhow. I'm still a little spooked to even think back on it for a couple of reasons that might become obvious as I tell you about what I remember. This was a long time ago, but it was a terrifying encounter, and it's hard for me to forget about it. Okay, so a buddy of mine had been urban exploring in an older town near where we lived. There were a number of older abandoned buildings there and not much policing, so it was easy to do it without getting caught. Back then, I used to camp out and he wasn't into that while I wasn't into the urbex thing, but one time when I was camping, I was playing frisbee with my dog and I tripped over something near the foot of a tree. I thought it was the tree's root, but when I looked closer, I was surprised to find it was a doorway of some kind, only it was built to look like it was the bottom part of this tree and its root. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It looked to me like someone had spent a lot of time intricately carving this doorway and hiding it there. But then I looked closer and it kind of looked mass manufactured. Utterly confused, I opened the door and stared down into the darkness. There were steps leading down further than I could see. I decided I'd better close that door as quietly as I could and get away from that area. But my dog pushed past me and ran down the steps before I could grab her. I ran down into the darkness and I could hear my dog barking in the distance. I had no light with me and I wasn't sure what the heck I was doing, but I just kept going. I remember I had my eyes open as wide as possible, hoping they would adjust to the dark quickly. In the meantime, I moved my feet carefully, testing the ground gingerly before making each step. This was back before cell phone flashlights, so I just listened for my dog and held the walls with my hands, walking carefully forward. The tunnel narrowed. Then eventually, I could make out a light at the far end, and I sped up a little bit, hoping to find my dog quickly and get back to safety. The tunnel opened into a room that was dimly lit from a source I couldn't make out. This was not a cave. This was a man-made room with pipes running near the ceiling along the walls. It looked like some sort of military bunker maybe. There were offshoot tunnels in nearly every direction. I saw my dog and grabbed her collar quickly. She was staring intently at something and growling. I looked, and there, about 40 or 50 feet away, in the entrance to some dark tunnel, stood the silhouette of something upright. It looked like a man with a wolf headdress on. Maybe this was someone enacting an ancient ritual and we had invaded his privacy. Or, maybe more likely, this might be a crazy person. I opened my mouth to apologize, but found my voice choked with fear in the presence of this big man. I cleared my throat and apologized, saying we were just leaving. Instead of saying something back, the large figure growled. That set my dog barking, and I had to really use all my strength to drag her out of that place. The entire way back, it sounded like that figure was following us, back in the darkness. But he was always just a little too much in the shadows for me to make out what exactly it was. When we got back up those stairs, I left my camping gear there and just brought myself and the dog home. I made a mental note of the location, which was about the best thing I could do back in those days before GPS. I knew my urban exploration friend would want to check it out, although I personally never wanted to go anywhere near that place ever again. So, after giving my friend, let's call him Patty, the directions to the fake tree door, he reported back to me that he could not find it. He talked me into bringing him to the place myself, which took quite an effort, believe me. I was genuinely afraid of that tribal guy with the dog headdress. With his mask on in the dark, he looked almost 7 feet tall. The guy had to be over 6 feet with it off, and I was not as tall as that. Neither was Patty. I don't remember what he promised me or gave me or whatever to get me to go, but eventually I agreed and I went. Except I couldn't find the door on the tree either. I was certain I had made all the right turns, and I was 100% sure we were in the general area. It had to be within a 200-foot radius of us, so I said, let's just examine all the roots of all the trees and eventually we'll hit bingo. Patty wanted to split up, but I said no, because I didn't even want to be there in the first place. I felt unsafe there and wanted to go home. If the place was military, and if it was actually still active, just going back there might already have gotten me put on some list. I whined and complained a lot because I wanted to go. Patty got annoyed at my whimpering and turned at me angrily. He seemed to be about to say something to me, then his gaze unfocused, and he stared beyond me with a look of shock and growing horror on his face. I turned around as fast as I could and saw what must have been the same thing I had seen in that tunnel, except now that I could see it more clearly. I could tell that it was not a man wearing a dog headdress or a mask of any sort. This was some kind of hideous and unnatural, but apparently biological creature standing there. It was like a man, but it was not a man. It was a hairy animal with immense, angry eyes and a long dog or wolf-like snout, but it stood on its hind legs like a man, or really like some kind of a devil from the underworld. The two of us took off running away from that thing, and it felt like it was right behind us the entire time. When we reached the visitors center, where there were other people, we wondered if we were safe. Would it show itself in front of the others? Or would it be content to just scare us off? Rather than walking home as we had planned to do, we decided to take the bus. Not the bus that went closest to our houses, but the bus that had the largest crowd of people waiting to get on it. We stood the entire way, then had long walks home, but they were walks through populated neighborhoods, far from the forest, and far from any underground, military-style bunker systems guarded by the Dogman. Don't go away, Henrey Lee Dogman will be right back with another underground Dogman story right after this.
Debbie, I don't understand your cosplay costume for St. Patty's Day Northeast Comic-Con.
I'm going as a leprechaun from the movie Leprechaun. If he was a, bikini model, yo. Hooray!
Dogman in the basement. Dear Daily Dogman, my story takes place in the 1960s when I was a kid. I remember it all like it happened just yesterday, though. About a year before the birth of my younger sister, my father was able to afford to buy this big old house out just past the edge of town. Mom was an antiques collector and had always dreamed of refurbishing an old mansion. The place was barely livable at first, which Dad hated, but Mom and I loved cleaning the place up and making it seem young again. The one place none of us really wanted to go, though, was the basement. The basement, you see, smelled really badly. It smelled like sulfur, I guess. Sometimes it was sort of like the odor of matches. Other times the odor of, well, natural gas, if you know what I mean. It didn't smell good. So we kept the door to the basement, which was located in the kitchen, closed and locked at all times. But Mom knew that sooner or later, it would come time to fix up the basement. And once the rest of the home was looking great and feeling homey, she decided that time had come. She dispatched me to go down for her and look around, then report back to her what the most important things we needed to do would be. She also assigned me to try to find out what that horrible odor was. I think she was afraid it was going to be something that would make her scream, whereas she knew I liked gross stuff back then when I was a boy. These days, it would be called bad parenting, but I was actually hoping to find at least bugs down there, so I didn't mind at all. So I went to the door with all the keys my mom had given me. I think it had 3 key locks and 2 or 3 other kinds of locks, and it took me a while and a lot of noisy jingle-jangling of keys before I got the door open. The thing is, when I opened it up, I didn't even need to take one step down those stairs to know what the main problem was going to be in terms of fixing up that basement. I'm also kind of sure I found at least part of the reason for that awful smell. You see, when I looked down those stairs into the basement, what I saw squinting and blinking in the sudden brightness, looking right back at me, was some kind of honest-to-God boogeyman. This was not a Bigfoot. Oh, it was as tall as a Bigfoot. It looked like it could come up those stairs in 2 steps. It had curly hair all over, and it was fairly long and shaggy. But I don't mean just on its head, I mean all over its body. And although it stood up like a man, the body was shaped weird, and it was more like a goat standing up than a man, or maybe a very shaggy, long-haired sheep. But its face was not that of a sheep. It did have a long snout, but the nose was dark like a dog's nose. It also displayed long, sharp fangs, nothing like what a sheep's teeth looked like. It was kind of like a giant sheepdog standing on its hind legs. I was frozen in shock, unable to move, and unsure what the right thing to do would be anyway. Then the dog thing growled and crouched a bit as though it were about to spring up those stairs at me. I slammed the door, locked one of the turn locks, then ran screaming to my mother, which is what any kid would do in that situation. I was bawling my eyes out. I think I probably wet myself. I was just a kid, and I had no idea there was going to be something bigger than my father that looked like it wanted to eat me when I opened the door to the basement. My mother held me and tried to calm me down by speaking soothingly to me, but my father was having none of this. My screaming had interrupted his TV sports programming, and he decided now would be a good time to teach his weepy, whiny son a lesson in how to act like a grown man. Dad grabbed me by the arm and pulled me over to the basement door in the kitchen. "What did you say was down there?" he asked me gruffly like a police officer. "A monster," I began. He pulled hard on my arm. "Don't lie to your father," he shouted in my face. I cried harder. This was overwhelming to me. Why was I being yelled at because I had just been traumatized? I tried to explain through tears that we needed to get away from that door and that we were in danger. But my father just made fun of the way I was crying in between words and made me cry more. My mother asked him to stop, and he said it would stop after I admitted I was lying about a monster to get out of work. Again, I insisted the monster was real and that we were in danger. My father was outraged at the lengths I was willing to take this false drama. That's all it was to him. So, finally, inevitably, my father pulled the door to the basement open. His eyes boring into mine, he gestured toward the basement, asked me to tell him now what I saw down in the basement. He and I both turned at the same time to look, and at that same moment, we both saw two giant man-shaped creatures with long curly fur and dog-like heads. One of them sprang up the stairs. Dad got it shut just in time, but now the monster was on the other side, trying to beat the door open. While Dad held it shut with his back, Mom and I locked each lock until they were all secured. The monsters kept banging and howling and barking on the other side. When the two of them let up for a minute, Dad ordered us into the car and we took off to a motel. We stayed there for about a week as Dad had animal control come in and some workers. They found a hole had been eaten away in the wall down there, and it led to a natural cave system. Whether it was the dogmen who cut the wall away, I don't know, but I do know they used that opening to come into our basement and make it their sort of den. Because Dad had the workers clean the place out, I never really found out exactly how bad it was down there, but I can imagine. And I have a few guesses about those terrible odors as well. All of that went away after the wall was sealed over. Dad bragged that he had used metal that no animal could get through, mixed between layers and layers of concrete, so he was secure that the monsters would never come back. For me, it was terrifying, knowing that those things lived in my neighborhood. Even if they couldn't come up into our basement anymore, they probably could get into our sewer system We were probably walking over their heads all the time without even knowing it. I didn't miss that house when we moved out a year or two later. Although my mom and I first loved the mystery of the old place, when some of those mysteries were solved, they only left us more confused and frightened. It never really came to feel like home there. Mom's refurbishing was fantastic though, so Dad was able to resell it at a much better price than he paid. He told me and Mom we could move any place in the world that we wanted to. So we told him where we wanted to be, and that's where he moved us. To an apartment in a densely populated city on a very, very high floor. We sometimes have to deal with bugs. We never have to deal with Dogman. Hope you liked that story. Don't forget, tomorrow we have a new chapter of Brian's Lichen Troubles, our ongoing werewolf saga. That's tomorrow. Same dog time, same dog channel.
I hear there's a celebrity with the initials GG appearing at the next Northeast Comic-Con.
Is it Gina Gershon?
What? No.
Is it Greg Grumberg?
Greg which?
Greta Garbo?
In the description of this video, we've got a link to our new Scary Stories t-shirt. It's our classic skull logo, and it says Scary Stories underneath in the Kaiju Monster font. It comes in black and also black and other dark colors, such as black. Good for ladies or gentlemen, hoodies too, whatever you need. Oh, I also should plug the new Those American Girls album. It's got Madeline Starr on it and Patricia Howdigi and Colleen Great, and all the songs are written by Those American Girls. This one has no cover tracks on it. The title is Those American Girls Turn Off the TV, and you can get it from the link or links in the description.
Come back for more scary stories.